Good morning. Well, it is here anyway. As you can see, it's a bright sunny day outside, and I want to get a little bit philosophical today. Talk about things which are a bit more difficult to grasp than how sharp a lens is. Let me explain. Today I have had a new lens arrive, and this I'm hoping is the end of a journey. I believe is the end of a journey. A journey that started back in 2012 when I did my first wedding. My first paid wedding anyway. I've done weddings before that. Ever since then, and up until probably the start of the wedding season this year, which because of COVID didn't really start until July, up until then I've been looking, I've been searching, I've been trying to find the pieces to the jigsaw. When it comes to wedding photography, and by the way, this isn't just aimed at wedding photographers. Today's video is all about matching your gear with your style, with your aspirations, and how important getting all that stuff is. And stick with it. I will explain, I hope. Today is the place I've been looking to be. It's where my gear, my camera and lenses, matches the style of photo that I want to create. And that might sound a really simple thing. You might think, well, I've got a zoom lens and a prime lens. I can go off and I can shoot pretty much anything. And that was what I thought when I started out doing weddings. I had a 24-120 f4 Nikon lens. Beautiful lens, really good lens, and I think I probably had a 51.8 D lens, I guess, back then. And the journey from 2012 to 2021, the end of 2021, I've been looking, I've been searching, and as I say, today I've believe that I've got all the bits of the jigsaw in place. So this journey that I've taken of, I don't know what it is, 130, 140 weddings, something like that. And as I said earlier, don't worry if it's not weddings that you do, because this applies to every type of photography. There's two things which influence the photos that you create. Your style, and I'll talk more about that, and your gear, and we'll talk more about that. And it is, I didn't realise until probably 3 years ago how important it is that your style and your gear fit together. Because if they don't, and prior to a few months ago, and in fact maybe even prior to today, those bits didn't fit together. I didn't realise it, and you probably don't realise it, which is why I'm doing this video, because I hope it will maybe get you thinking about photography and the way you do it and what gear you've got and so on. So when I started doing weddings, I saw videos and I read things about having a style, and I kind of got what they were talking about, but I didn't really completely understand it. I could look at wedding photos and yeah, sure, it's easy. If someone's photographing a whole wedding in black and white, that's their style. If they photograph weddings and every shot is people laughing, joking, drinking, falling over, and that's their style. So at the extremes, I got it. But that's the extremes. I didn't get, and that's not what I wanted to do, I didn't get style when it was kind of in the middle. And that's, well, I didn't know where I wanted to be. I didn't know what style I wanted to take. And you only get to know what style of photographs you want to take, be it weddings, be it portraits, be it landscapes, wildlife. You don't know what it is you want to do until you've done it, and then you've done something else and something else and something else and something else, and then you can look back, and that might be 2-3 years later, look back and say, yeah, that's the one I like, that's what I want to do. And then you start to focus in on that, and you start to narrow it down a bit, and you sort of stick to that style, but then within that style there's different ways of getting those shots, still within the same style, but just refining that style. And again, it takes a year, maybe another 2 years. And then you look back through all those different variations you've done, and you find this style that finally it's narrowed down to you. This is your style. This is what you want to do. And I've been on that journey, and I'm fingers crossed, I'm now at the end of that journey, and I'm going to stick with this at least very closely for the next whatever number of years I do this for. And along that journey, the gear that you use influences your style. When I started out, as I say, I had a zoom lens and one prime lens, 50mm, and that influences the way you take photos physically. With a zoom lens, you can stand there, you can twist the zoom in and out, and that's what I did to start with. There was quite low levels of physical activity. As I progressed, I did things slightly differently, and maybe I used the 50mm lens a bit more. At some point I got an 85, 1.8 D lens probably. I got flash, I got off-camera flash, and by having different gear, you experiment and you do something for 2 or 3 weddings, you look at the photos and I don't really like that. So then you move on to something else. How can I do this differently? And your gear influences what you can do differently. And photography is, I don't want to get too kind of zen-like or tree hugging or anything like that. But photography is very much about finding a place where you're completely comfortable, where you are completely satisfied with what you're doing. And when you're trying to find your style of photography, I found anyway, quite often you are dictating your style by your gear. If you haven't got a super fast 85mm lens that is absolutely top quality, then you can't take photos that are of that style because you just don't have the gear to do it. I can remember when I first started, well, not when I first started, for a long time now, I've seen top class, world class photographers saying things like, gear doesn't matter. Give a good photographer any gear and he can take a good photo. And they say that with their £15,000 worth of Leica hanging around their neck. Of course gear matters. They're talking absolute rubbish. I don't know what planet they're on. Maybe they're not actually as good as they think they are, because gear does matter. It dictates what you can do. It dictates how you do what you do. And my journey included 2 years with Sony, which it teaches you something. Even if it's a mistake, it's still positive, because it taught me that I don't like the sort of photos that Sony does. I don't like the sort of photos that I get when I put a Sigma 85mm 1.4 lens on a Sony camera, and I've gone very dark, I apologise. I don't like those photos. So that was a journey into a style which didn't work for me. I didn't like it at all, which is why I came back to Nikon nearly 1 year ago, and is why I've now got the gear I've got. So let me explain the gear I've now got, why I've got it, and how I use it, and how that affects the style of photos I do. And I think being a wedding photographer, just before I get onto that, I think that's quite useful for me to explain this to you, because a wedding photography covers many genres of photography. I do product photography, I do architectural photography, I won't say landscape, no, architectural covers it. Obviously portraits, I do action. It covers so much, which kind of makes you think, well, I need this lens, I need a whole raft of completely different lenses to cover each one of those situations. And in some way I do, and that has been the problem, to whittle that vast array of gear down that you might think you need to something that is manageable and that doesn't put me in a situation where I'm constantly thinking, what should I use for this shot? because consistency is key. I need to know, for this shot in front of me, for this environment, for this light, I need this, and I just grab whatever this is, and I know that that will work, and I know that in a month's time, in 6 months' time, given those same situation, I will grab the same thing and get consistent photos. I think I finally got there. So let me explain my gear. And the reason I'm doing this is because this guy has just arrived today. This is the 85 1.4 G lens Nikon. And this now completes the lineup of lenses that I want. Now, lenses are way more important than camera. When I first started, again, I heard these people saying lenses are a lot more important than cameras. And again, said by people holding a 6 grams worth of Leica. But on that one, they're actually right. It's the lens that you use that will dictate the photo that you end up with. And this really came home to me a few weeks ago when I was going back through a dozen or so weddings that I'd done in quite a short space of time. And I looked at the photos, and some of the photos look very similar at first glance, and they were taken with my 24-70 Tamron lens. Tamron because it's got image stabilization, so I can use it on my D780, and I've got some sort of image stabilization. And it was taken maybe at 53mm or something like that, at f2.8. I would then see another picture that looked quite similar, taken with, back then, my 50mm 1.4 G lens. And although at first glance the images looked very similar, when I looked more closely and asked myself, which one of these photos do I like, which one do I prefer, every single time it was the prime lens. And over the last 6 or 10 weddings, I've used the zoom lens less and less and less, and now I really only pick it up if I'm really in a tight spot and I need, I'll explain later, really need the flexibility of a zoom lens, because the images just are not, even though it's a 2.8, they are just not anywhere close to being the same as we get with, and here we go, the 58 1.4G or the 85 1.4G or even the 35 1.8. Those three lenses are now the absolute mainstay of my photography. And along the way, and the last couple of, well, in the last year that I've come back to Nikon, I hate to think, I'm not even going to try and guess how much money I've wasted buying lenses, trying them out, swapping them over. And this is for sale. This is my 85 1.4D lens. It's a gorgeous lens, but it's still not quite in the same ballpark as the G lens. I recently got the 105 f2D lens because at some point in the past, when I had Nikon before I moved to Sony, I played around with the 135 f2 defocus lens, and I absolutely loved it, and I loved the shots that I got. But 135 at a wedding is really too long. There are many occasions, lots of occasions, when you simply can't get back far enough to get the shot that you want. 135 I find for a wedding too long, which is why I got the 105. And I thought, well, maybe 105. Maybe instead of getting the 85 1.4 G lens, which has just arrived, I should go for the 105. So that was an experiment. So I think my message here is experiment. It's going to cost you money. I'm afraid there is no substitute for buying a different lens, trying it out, seeing if you like the images, because you can do lots of research and watch YouTube videos like me, but you can't be getting out there doing it yourself. And repeat, lenses determine the look of your photos. Let me just quickly digress. Let me just show you a few of the shots that I've picked out as being good representations of my style of wedding photography. First of all, we've got Jill and Tony. They're walking into the wedding breakfast, and this was the 51.4 at the time, and I just managed to capture that look. If I asked Jill and Tony to stand outside in a beautiful part of the garden or the building and look at each other or do something, try and pose them, try and set a shot, there is no way I could get that look. That look to me is everything. It's, as I say, a picture tells 1,000 words. It speaks 1,000 words, and this one really does. This is my new husband. I'm totally in love with him, and I'm absolutely so enjoying this day. That is so meaningful to me. A bit later on, I did take some shots of Jill. Again, this is the 51.4. She just happened to be walking down the stairs as I was walking past at the bottom, and I previously spotted this window, and she just happened to be there. I said, literally, I just said, "Hold it there, Jill," and I just got that shot. I didn't tell her how to stand, how to pose, how to do anything. It's 100% natural. This one was from last Saturday, actually, very recent one, and this was with the 58 1.4. I just love it's natural, it's unposed, it's in the moment. It just, well, for me, it just says everything what that a wedding is. But the 58 1.4G, it's completely isolated the bride, Jessica, and whatever this guy is, his name is, and you can see we've got lovely, gently out of focus foreground and lovely, gently out of focus background. They actually really do pop off the image, I believe, and yet I see so many comments about sharpness and how it's so important to have sharp images and how you've got to have a Sigma lens or a Nikon Z lens because they're sharp. I think you can see very well that is not sharp. I think when I go into Lightroom, I think it actually focused on his ear. I think that's the sharpest part of the image. And yet, really, does it matter? They're so separated from the background and the foreground, it really doesn't matter. So they're kind of the images that I like to get. So documentary, in the moment, unposed, honest, real life. So onto the actual gear. D780. I got this when I swapped from Nikon back to swapped from Sony back to Nikon. As I say, just coming up to a year ago. I looked at the Nikon cameras available at the time. I so missed with Sony. I so missed my DSLR. That I wanted a DSLR. Nikon were offering. I really had the choice of the 850 or the 750, which I'd had previously. The 850, I didn't need all those megapixels for a wedding. The D780 had recently come out and was a beautiful combination of a slightly improved D750, which has an absolutely fantastic camera, and they stuck a Z6 inside it for live view. A beautiful combination, and it's, if I had to choose between this and my Z5, this would be the one that I would take. This always gets the shot. It never lets me down. It is dead simple to use. It just does the job. Paired normally with the 58 1.4 G lens. That pretty well stays on my camera the whole time at a wedding. The 85 1.4 G is on the Z5. The reason it's on the Z5 and not the other way around is Z5 has obviously got image stabilization. This is a longer lens at 85mm. Occasionally I think the image stabilization will just play a part in getting a better image. And I love the Z5. Yes, I could upgrade it to a Z6 II, but really the only benefit would be a much faster burst rate. well, I've got the D780 if I need some shots to fire off quickly. This is really good for composing. Because of the EVF, I can compose, I can see the lighting. And you might be thinking, well, 85 and 58 is very close together. And which is why I was considering whether I should go for the 105. And the thing is, yes, they're quite close, but in real life, if I'm using the 58, if I take one step back and get a shot with the 58, then pick up the 85 and take one step forward, I've moved 2 steps, and I will get completely different shots. They look totally different. And so whilst the difference in focal length isn't huge, as I say, by 1 step back or 1 step forward, you can exaggerate that difference to become really significant and get absolutely superb quality images. If I need to, I will pop the 35 lens, probably on the D780, and that will account for almost all of my wedding photos. I do have, and this is a real old one, an 18 to 35 zoom, which for a few shots during the day comes in handy for the wide shots, the ceremony room, trying to get everyone in the shot, architecture shots, or shots with maybe something like the bride's dress, long train. If I pop that on, I can get a very distorted shot of the bride's dress and make it look 3 times as long as it really is. Occasionally it comes in useful, just for getting those few shots like that. As I've said just now, the 24 to 70 very rarely gets used now, but there's no way I'm selling that. It's a very versatile lens and comes in useful occasionally. So that is my gear. 2 cameras, 5 lenses, and that is as complicated as I want it to be. So my message here, why I've done this video, is to share my story and how gear influences your style, how it takes a long time to find your style, and then how it takes time to get the gear that perfectly complements that style and works with it. So often the gear gets in the way of getting the photo you want. If you haven't got the right lens, if you've got this picture in your head of what you want to shoot and you haven't got the right gear, or you've got to use a zoom lens when you really should be using a much faster prime lens, this kind of stuff, it will all inhibit and hold back your photography. There's no easy answer other than just keep doing it, just keep checking things out, experimenting. And they really go hand in hand, your style and your gear, and eventually, I hope, you will get to a place where I hope I've got to, where style, gear works together, the jigsaw fits nicely, and you're able to really then just really focus on what's in front of the camera and getting the very best shot of that makes you happy. Because photography, even wedding photography where I'm being paid, is about making me happy. I've got no idea what shots, what photos are really going to make the bride and groom happy. So I just shoot for me. I just get those photos. I hope something amongst that lot was interesting to you, will help you think a little bit about your photography and where you're going from here, and how to develop as a photographer. Be interested to have any comments, thoughts, ideas and questions. If you'd like to see my next video, which, by the way, I should have mentioned right at the beginning, is boudoir shoot tomorrow. So I'll be using these guys at this boudoir shoot. I did one a couple of weeks ago. I did do a behind the scenes. I just haven't got around to doing any editing and creating a video. I will do that again tomorrow, and I will hopefully be able in a few days to upload a behind the scenes boudoir shoot using this stuff here. Thanks for watching. Oh, and by the way, obviously, if you subscribe, click the bell and so on and so forth, you will get to see that video when it comes up next. Have a good day. Cheers.